virtual applause. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to this session, Moving from Proprietary to Open Source Culture. Again, my name is Petra Sargent, and I am a former proprietary software developer, and now I am an associate manager at Red Hat. So, what's the secret? How do you move from proprietary to open source? In this talk, you will hear about what helped me best navigate the challenges, embrace the culture shift, and lessons learned from my journey. My journey includes, three topics. I'll first to talk about the beginning of my journey, where I describe where I started in the proprietary culture. Next, I will discuss the challenges that I faced from moving from proprietary to open source and how I overcame them. And then I will describe my lessons learned. I won't cover necessarily how to your software project, move it from proprietary to open source, but I will cover, my journey and the different lessons that I had from moving to open source. All right, so the beginning. Let's start at the beginning. Here is a picture of me that was taken over 20 years ago, and it was published in a journey for the Society of Women's Engineers. And this photograph makes me smile in many ways. First, look at that terminal on the table. When was the last time you've seen that? It is a dummy terminal, and some of you may not have even seen it unless it was in movies. And also in the background, the picture is a switch, and it fills the entire room. But now this equipment, it's all virtualized and it takes up fractions of the space. But I do remember this quite vividly when I took this picture. I was very excited. I just completed my computer science degree at UNC Chapel Hill, ready to conquer the world. I was so happy and fortunate to land a job at Nortel Networks as a software engineer. Nortel Networks was an international telecommunications and data networking equipment manufacturer. And this is where my proprietary journey began. I developed software here for a carrier grade telephone switch. This purpose of the switch is to provide local services and connection to the public telephone network. Although I learned Pascal in college, when I joined Nortel Network, I was trained in proprietary programming language. I used a proprietary operating system and a proprietary version control software. And this is a picture of the system architecture book. I kept a copy of this book on my desk, and I used to lock it up when I left the office because it was confidential. So this is the proprietary, work environment that I experienced, and I really enjoyed it. Had lots of great opportunities to do some interesting work. I worked in Tokyo, Japan, where I supported a customer while they deployed computer telephony software that my team developed. So I really enjoyed working in a proprietary environment. And then there was a turning point more so in my career that really made me think about things. And this happened at a career day. I was invited to speak at a STEM career panel at a local middle school. I shared with students my day-to-day responsibility as a software engineer. And then one of the students asked me, is this really what you want to do in life? Do you enjoy and love what you're doing? So, whenever you get that question, whenever I got that question from a manager, I would give the safe answer and say yes. But I hadn't been asked by an innocent sixth grader. And I really had to reassess where I was in my career. And I thought about the proprietary environment and how I became an expert in this particularly area. Was I learning different types of technology in a closed system? Was my skill set marketable? I thought all about these things, and I was wondering was the challenge and creativity still there? So life went on. I did have some major life changes. I left Nortel Networks and I took a career break so I could focus on my family. I think I skipped. And so now I want to talk about, the challenges of shifting to open source, um, to open source. When I was ready to enter the workforce, the question that the sixth grader asked, lingered in my mind. And is this really what I wanted to do? And I applied to several jobs that I thought would be a good match. But I kept getting feedback that they were looking for people who had 5 or more years experience in Java and Python. And it seems like all the proprietary things that I learned over my career was no longer in demand or in use. So my first challenge was figuring how I could leverage my skills that I learned, that I gained in a proprietary, into working in a proprietary company. And that is when I decided to learn Python. And I did that on my own and discovered that coding was just like riding a bike. But I realized that I needed a project to gain experience. And I also noticed the shift to open source. But the challenge was there were so many choices for OpenShift. There were so many choices like which project should I use. There were projects where there's communities that were less than 50 people to these huge open source projects that included contributors from all over the world. And so it was hard to comprehend, which one I should work on. And also, it was great to have all these different choices. So, one thing that I did was it was overwhelming, but how could I dive into this open source community? So I did a keyword search in GitHub to find, these communities. I started putting technical terms at skills that I had to look for different projects in GitHub to help me narrow down the search of what community that I would want to join and try to contribute to. But the next set event was pretty amazing as I look back at my journey. I went to a conference, and in the conference, there was a flyer, and the flyer had an internship about called Outreachy. And here's a flyer, one of the latest flyers. And I was thinking, oh yeah, this is perfect. This internship will, I get a mentor for one thing, and it'll teach me how to join and participate in an open source community. So I was very excited, to say the least, about this. It's a paid remote internship program, and it helps people traditionally underrepresented in tech make their first contributions. So very excited about this opportunity. Here are some of the sponsors of Outreachy. These are the top sponsors here. So The one thing about Outreachy, it was great that they had this internship, but in order to just apply, one of the things I had to do is make a contribution to a community. So, and at that time, the deadline to participate was like 30 days away. So I had to figure out how can I contribute to an open source community. So what I decided to do was to make my first contribution to OpenStack. I decided to leverage my interests and my networking background and make my first contribution to OpenStack. So you know, I was new to open source and cloud technology, but I was very excited about learning and making a contribution in all the possibilities. So I browsed, you know, as a new person, first time contributor, OpenStack website, and I saw there was a page just for newcomers, and the web page outlined how to contribute. But one of the first things that I noticed and was excited about that you contribute in so many different ways. You can contribute into not only software bugs, but also documentation, user experience design, community management, quality assurance. Um, so these were, I felt like these were some skill set that I developed over my career. But it was great that I didn't have to have like 5 years experience to contribute. So this was very encouraging, and I decided to dive in there, and I was eager to do some coding. So I decided to do a software contribution and look at some bugs. The new page also recommended that I join several OpenStack mailing lists so I could be part of the community and set up my environment, to chat. So I did all those things. Um, the first thing for a new contributor, they say look for a low hanging fruit, right? So they look for a bug that's called a low hanging fruit for newcomers. And that is, I picked one and started working on it. And, the challenge is, being new is I didn't know anyone in the open source community. So my first step was to introduce myself to the community on the mailing list and explain that, hey, I want to make this contribution and be part of this open source movement. Um, so I did receive warm responses from contributors. Um, and, they recommended some bugs that I take a look at. And so I started looking at that, and I emailed the contributor that reported the bug, but I didn't receive much of a response at first. And I found out that, um, didn't get a response from the originator to answer my questions about this bug. So what should I do? But then I found out that everyone was traveling to a summit in Tokyo, Japan. Um, so they were traveling to Tokyo. And so I was like, well, how do you handle that? There's nobody responding to me. And I had questions, and how do I handle that? But this was an introduction to how people in open source meet pre-COVID, face to face. They met face to face, develop the product further in summits. But even though everyone was traveling, I did, find someone, kept asking and finding someone that was responsive, and they were there to help me answer my questions on my first bug, and they were able to guide me with my first contributions. So after, I was engaged with the community, I was able to, it was time to submit my fix for the first, for my first contribution. Um, so I clicked submit and waited to see what happened. So this was my first contribution here. I was excited. First contribution to open source community. And I received feedback from, it was 10 contributors, and the feedback ranged from positive to constructive to confusing. And it really took time to read and understand each comment that was made about my software fix, and to accept the comments in constructive ways. So this was my first experience with understanding and learning about, reviews and feedback from the community. So I wasn't used from, for proprietary environments, the wide variety, of contributors. And I was used to getting feedback in a more like formal, structured way. But, it was really the help of the community that I was able to make my first contribution to OpenStack. And then finally, my software fix did get accepted. And I was very, excited to, make that first contribution. And I was very excited, much like, the photo I shared with you, 20 years that I took, excited like that. So after the contribution, I was um, accepted in the Outreachy program. And my project was with Neutron, pluggable IPAM support for host-dependent IP address allocation was my project. And I was assigned a mentor. That's one of the best things about participating in Outreachy was I was assigned a mentor who could help me navigate the open source world. My mentor, he was a contributor who worked in the UK. So we coordinated our time zone and we worked together to build a project. So my mentor he would always encourage me to submit questions to the community. And what I was really, realizing that he was encouraging me to you really have to be engaged with the community. I was apprehensive because from a traditional software development background, I wasn't sure if my questions were right. But I did, start setting aside time to read the discussions on the mailing list so that I could be familiar to and understand, what is the current debate. And sometimes I was really surprised about how passionate the debate could be. So I continued on and I worked on my coding project. And my mentor discovered that there was another team that's working on a similar project. And, I was kind of surprised. I collaborated with the team to see if we could merge our projects together, but they had gotten kind of further along on the solution. So I worked with my mentor to find other ways that I could make a positive contribution. And we decided to refocus my effort to write a how-to IPAM driver guide for developers instead of my original coding project. I was initially, discouraged because I invested time in the solution. And I thought, oh gosh, this is a failure. But I learned in open source culture that you had to be prepared to, to pivot, to change track, based on what you learn from others. Excuse me. So I was learning the principle of a fail faster. where you fail in small, manageable waves, and that it's good. It's good. So I was learning to embrace this culture, the culture here. So I continued and continued, and I worked on my now, my documentation, how to guide for developers. And I would always go and just ask my mentor to review my how to guide. I would ask him directly, but he encouraged me, you know what, submit it for review to the community. Go ahead and submit it to the community. And he did that even before I thought I was finished, that I had fully completed the project. I wanted more time to flesh things out in detail. In the proprietary world, I only asked for reviews when my project was complete. But what I realized is that he was teaching me the principle of release early and release often. So rather than keeping, the project secret, just go ahead out there and get feedback, get feedback from others, get your peer reviewed and get feedback early in office. So that was a shift for me as well. So after writing the how-to guide, completing the internship, I discovered that documentation is where I wanted to make a difference. The experience of contributing to an open source community helped me land a position as a technical writer at Red Hat. And then completing the internship also helped me embrace the open source culture. The community drives decisions, they drive the decisions making. Is very empowering in one hand. That's possible to contribute more than ever before. I felt that I have a voice. On the other hand, I had to be very comfortable with, receiving feedback and perhaps even challenge in ways outside of my comfort zone. This collaborating, I thought was, I really enjoyed it, and the open source community really resonated with me, and I realized that this is where I want to be. The lessons learned. Let's talk about, lessons that I learned. Um, Really, onboarding is so key. It is key to newcomers coming, looking to make contributions to open source projects. It will determine how quickly they can contribute. They can, how quickly they'll stay with the community. It's very important to have, on the website, start here, to have the training there. Also, I think it would be great to have on the website different skills, like skill sets that are needed for the open source community, whether it's project management, it could be, organizing, it could be software development, and match that with, different tasks that the community needs. So when somebody comes in and ready to contribute, they see, oh, okay, I could do that and I can contribute here. It's great that you contribute in so many different areas, but it's key that that is on, communicated and available on the website. So I think that is very key. Along with having mentoring, that is key as well. Um, Mentoring, not only sometimes when you think mentor, you think about, if you're doing a software development fix, mentoring to how to, the code, but I feel like a mentor to help a person adjust to the community and the culture there. So kind of like a culture mentor or open source culture mentor, where they can kind of explain it to anyone new from a proprietary background or or somebody from proprietary background, like what's the culture, there, and they can understand that as they're on the community and they're working. So I think that is key. I do want to call out here that I'll put the link. I don't think you could see that, but the sign up for community to participate in the next round for Outreachy Mentor is tomorrow. So you can mentor for Outreachy. Many communities are already signed up to participate, but you can also sign up as a mentor with one of the communities if you're already working with them. So I can't emphasize enough how important, it is to have a mentor. Okay. Also, for someone, a person just who's, proprietary and new to open source, there are resources there that can help them. Look for those. I listed some here. There's some really good resources that help with transitioning to open source. See. Another thing is to be persistent. Initially when I was in the community, and I was working on a task and I called out to the originator, I didn't get a response. But be, persistent and trying to be engaged in the community. Be persistent in finding the right open source project. Looking for your core skill sets and look. So that's, there are projects out there. That can utilize your skills. Also look for one that have a code of conduct, and that are welcoming to newcomers. The next thing is patience. It takes time to adjust, so be patient. It takes time to engage in the community. It takes time to look through the feedback and understand that and read feedback and from others. And participation, is great. You don't have to have permission to work on a certain technology. You can decide, where you want to work on and just dive in. So make sure, participation is for someone who wants to go. That's important. So regardless if you're from a closed nature platform and you've already worked on something, you do have valuable skills to be able to be a valuable open source contributor. This exciting thing is that you can choose which open source project and community that you would like to be a part of. So start now, contribute. Your skills are highly valued. Let's get started. And your skills are needed to deliver the best open source solution. And I just want to mention here, give credit to all the images here. So the slides of the images. And then wanted to thank you for attending the sessions and to see if there's any questions or take a pause here or comments.
Thank you very much, Petra, for your presentation today. Everybody, please give Petra a round of applause.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Great. And if anybody would like to follow up in the chat with any questions, now is a great time. While we're getting some questions in the queue, Deb, if you want to start queuing up, I'm going to add you as a presenter so that you can get on there. And once your slides are up, Petra, we can answer one or two questions off the Q&A if we want to pick a favorite.
Okay. I'm looking for the Q&A, so I may need some help here.
It's okay. They're typing their questions furiously.
Oh,
I can
okay,
see
in the chat.
the notifications coming in now. Yes. We'll give. So, how to upload slides is Deb's question. I don't think that one's for you, though. That's probably for Vladimir. Maybe
Okay.
Vlad, you can help her out. And I guess my question is, are you still involved with the Outreachy program at all? Do you still, is there a mentorship or otherwise relationship now between you and the work you did?
Yeah, I do stay closely contacted with the program manager at Red Hat, and I'm always looking for projects within Red Hat so that we can sponsor, have a couple of outreachy interns, and then also too, I'm applying to be a mentor this next round. So yes, definitely involved.
Great. And if anybody missed it earlier, outreachy.org is the URL where folks can find out more information about the internship program. And you said that their mentorship application ends tomorrow, right, Petra?
Yes. Well, the sign up for community participate in the next round are due tomorrow. So if the community, you want to participate in the round and have an intern, is due tomorrow. But the mentor signups, I take that back, are due September the 23rd.
Great. And we have a question from Salona. Hi, Salona. So she says that role diversity and contributions is something we are stressing at IEEE. The hardest part is tooling. Like marketing, there's so little out there that is open source. Are there any tools or et cetera that you can suggest, Petra?
So toolings for marketing per se?
For anything to help improve diversity of contributions in open source.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the diversity of contributions. I don't know of a tool per se that you could use, but yeah, I don't know. I think that it'd be nice maybe on the website to put like all the diversity, that you could choose from. I think if you make that really visible on the website, I think that would help. But I don't know of a tool.
Yeah, and that sounds like an opportunity for us in the audience, right? Yeah, absolutely. And like Petra was saying, we don't need permission, right? If there's a tool or there's a hole or there's a gap somewhere where we believe we can help, by all means, this is your invitation to do so.
Everybody. Yeah, absolutely. That's
awesome.
right.
Well, thank you so much again, everyone. Let's give Petra another